Imagine for a moment, you're in the comfort of your own home, surrounded by the familiar things you've spent a lifetime building. The smell of coffee in the morning, your favorite chair by the window, your plants thriving with your care, and the freedom to do what you want, when you want. Now, imagine that all of it disappears in an instant. What happens when you lose control over your life? When decisions about your meals, your daily routines, and even your movements are no longer in your hands. This is a reality many elderly people face when they move into a nursing home. It's a decision often made with the best of intentions, seeking safety, care, and comfort in a place where someone is always there to help. But is it really the best option? I want to share my personal story with you today, the story of my own experience moving into a nursing home at the age of 82. At the time, it seemed like a smart choice. My family assured me it would be safer, more convenient, and that I'd have all the care I needed. But what I found inside the walls of that nursing home was far from the peaceful life I had imagined. This video is about the 6 hard truths I wish I had known before making that life-changing decision. If you're someone who's considering a nursing home for yourself, a family member, or a loved one, this video might just be the most important thing you'll watch today. You see, the reality of life in a nursing home is not all rosy. It's a world that slowly strips away your independence, your sense of purpose, and even your dignity. The stories I'm about to share will open your eyes to the sacrifices we make when we step into this new phase of life. And I promise, these are lessons that could change the way you think about aging, care, and living your best life. Stay with me until the end of this video. You won't want to miss the lessons I've learned that could make all the difference in your future. So, let's dive into the very first regret I had when I moved into a nursing home: losing my independence. When I first moved into the nursing home, it wasn't the physical aspects of the facility that struck me the hardest: the small room, the unfamiliar faces, the hospital-like atmosphere. It was the loss of control over my own life. Prior to my move, I had lived in my own home, where I could decide when to wake up, when to eat, and what to do with my time. I had the autonomy to take walks whenever I wanted, cook my own meals, and enjoy the comfort of my favorite chair and the peacefulness of a space I had made my own. However, in the nursing home, things changed rapidly. The daily schedule was no longer mine. Every aspect of my life became subject to a set schedule that wasn't of my making. Breakfast was served at a fixed time each morning, whether I was hungry or not. The lights went out at a set hour, regardless of whether I was ready to sleep. If I wanted to go outside for a walk, I would need to request permission and then wait for staff to be available to assist me. Simple activities that were once my own decision became privileges I had to ask for. At first, I thought I could adapt. I convinced myself that I would get used to this new way of living, telling myself it would be temporary. But the truth is, the longer I stayed, the more I realized that I could never fully adjust to this loss of autonomy. I had no say in the basic elements of my life anymore, and that feeling of powerlessness was incredibly disheartening. The loss of independence, even in its most basic form, is perhaps one of the hardest aspects of aging. It's not just about physical limitations but about the core essence of who we are. Our independence, especially in our later years, is often closely tied to our sense of self-worth and identity. Famous personalities such as former U.S. President Jimmy Carter, who has continued to live independently even into his 90s, have been clear advocates of maintaining autonomy, underscoring its deep psychological importance. When we lose the ability to make even the smallest decisions for ourselves, it becomes difficult to retain our sense of who we are. I urge anyone considering a nursing home for themselves or a loved one to ask themselves, what would it be like to give up the freedoms that make life yours? Are you prepared for that shift in your daily life? Once you give up that independence, it becomes incredibly challenging to regain it, if ever at all. Regret 2, feeling forgotten. When I moved into the nursing home, I held on to the hope that my family would visit me regularly. In the beginning, my daughter would come by once a week, and my grandchildren would visit on weekends. It felt like a comfort to see familiar faces, and I thought that, as time passed, things would remain somewhat normal. But, as the months went on, the visits became less frequent. Life outside the nursing home continued for my family, and I slowly became less of a priority. At first, I didn't notice the gradual decline in visits. However, the realization hit me hard when I would spend days without seeing anyone from my family. I would sit in my room, staring at the door, hoping that someone would come through it. But often, the visits never came, and the calls from my family became fewer and fewer. On more than one occasion, I found myself holding the phone, contemplating whether to call my son. But I didn't want to burden him. I didn't want to remind him that I was sitting here, waiting, hoping for a visit that might never come. It's a painful feeling, the awareness that, while your family loves you, they may not fully realize the loneliness you feel when you're in a nursing home. The truth is, as you become more removed from the daily lives of those you love, it's easy for them to forget about you. It's not out of malice or neglect but simply because life moves on, and it's hard for them to see the daily emotional and psychological impact on you. The loneliness I experienced in the nursing home was something I had never fully anticipated. I began to understand why so many elderly individuals, like the late Queen Elizabeth II, who, despite being surrounded by people, often conveyed moments of solitude, deal with isolation as they age. It's not just about the absence of visitors but also the emotional distance that inevitably grows between generations. If you're considering a nursing home for yourself or a loved one, ask yourself, how will I cope with the isolation? Are you prepared for the emotional toll of being forgotten, not just in the physical sense but emotionally as well? Regret 3, losing my sense of purpose. Before moving into the nursing home, I had a strong sense of purpose in my life. I had routines that kept me active and engaged. I would water my plants, clean the house, make coffee every morning, and tidy up my space. These small tasks were essential in giving me a reason to get up each day and feel useful. However, once I moved into the nursing home, all of those responsibilities vanished. Meals were provided for me, and I no longer had to cook or clean. I didn't have any plants to care for, and I was no longer responsible for maintaining my environment. At first, I welcomed the break. No more chores, no more responsibilities. I could finally relax. But after a few weeks, I began to feel something missing. My days felt long and empty. The most difficult part of living in the nursing home was watching the slow withdrawal of purpose, not only in myself but also in the other residents. People who had once been vibrant, full of energy, and active in their communities now spent their days aimlessly staring into space. One resident, whom I'll call Henry, had been a skilled carpenter. At home, he would spend his days building and repairing things. But in the nursing home, he found himself with no tools, no projects, nothing to keep his hands busy. I often heard him say that he felt useless, and I could relate deeply. Having a sense of purpose is crucial for mental and physical well-being, especially in our later years. It's not just about having a reason to wake up in the morning, it's about staying mentally engaged, feeling that you contribute to the world around you, even in small ways. Some of the world's most successful individuals, like Warren Buffett, remain active and purposeful in their old age because they continue to engage with work and life, maintaining that vital spark of meaning. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, what gives my life meaning? Once that purpose is stripped away, how will you fill the emptiness? The loss of purpose can be one of the most debilitating aspects of aging, and it's something that's rarely discussed in relation to nursing homes. Regret 4. Declining health faster than expected. Before I moved into the nursing home, I was fairly active for my age. I walked regularly, prepared my own meals, and did light exercises to stay fit. But once I moved in, I started noticing a decline in my physical health. Initially, I thought that it was just the luxury of having others care for me. Meals were brought to my room, and I didn't have to worry about cleaning. But soon, I noticed that my legs started feeling weaker. The more I sat, the more I lost my strength. Getting out of a chair became more difficult with each passing day. What I didn't fully understand at the time was that the easier my life became, the more my body started to deteriorate. The lack of movement and reliance on others to do things for me led to a rapid decline in strength. I saw this happen to other residents too. Once, there was a woman named Ruth, who had been active and independent before she moved into the nursing home. She used to walk everywhere and take care of herself. But within a few months, Ruth was using a walker, then a wheelchair. Her body began to give up on her. The decline in physical health in a nursing home is often accelerated by the very system meant to help us. When everything is made easier for you, there's little motivation to stay active. And as we age, our bodies need to keep moving to stay strong. If we stop, we lose the strength we've worked so hard to maintain. People like the late Muhammad Ali, who continued to maintain a physical routine even after his diagnosis with Parkinson's disease, demonstrate the importance of staying active as we age. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, how will I stay physically active when everything is made easier for me? Will I have the motivation to continue taking care of my health, or will I let it slip away? Regret 5. The loss of privacy and dignity. One of the biggest surprises when I moved into the nursing home was the loss of privacy. At home, I had my own space. I could close the door to my room, sit in silence, and do things on my own terms. But in the nursing home, privacy is a luxury you no longer have. The staff are always coming in for checkups, and even simple things like getting dressed or using the bathroom require assistance. It was difficult for me to accept that the basic acts of independence I had once taken for granted now required help from someone else. I felt like a stranger in my own life. The loss of privacy wasn't just about physical space, it was about dignity. When you've spent your entire life maintaining your independence, it's hard to accept the fact that someone else now needs to be present for even the most personal moments. This loss of dignity can be especially painful. Take for example the situation of former U.S. President George H.W. Bush, who, despite his status, had to rely on aides and medical staff in his final years. Though he was a respected figure, he, too, faced the indignities of losing control over his body and life. Regret 6. Realizing it's harder to leave than you think. When I first moved into the nursing home, I assumed it would be temporary. I thought that if I didn't like it, I could always leave and return to my old life. But as time passed, I began to realize just how hard it was to leave once I was settled in. My house wasn't the same anymore, and the physical toll of inactivity made it difficult to return to my previous life. Many other residents I met had similar experiences. They thought they could just try out the nursing home and return home if it didn't work out. But, for most, leaving was not an option. The longer you stay, the more your life becomes intertwined with the nursing home. Whether it's due to financial constraints, physical limitations, or emotional barriers, leaving becomes increasingly difficult. The reality of not being able to return to your previous life can be a shock, and for some, it's an irreversible decision. Similar to the challenges faced by well-known figures like the late musician David Bowie, who faced tough decisions about his health care in his later years, leaving the nursing home is often harder than anticipated. As I sit here today, looking back on my time in the nursing home, I can honestly say that the one thing I don't regret is growing older. Life is a beautiful journey, and each phase brings its own set of lessons. But the one thing I deeply regret is thinking that a nursing home was my only option. In hindsight, I didn't fully understand what I was giving up: the small freedoms that made my life feel uniquely mine, the ability to move at my own pace, to eat what I wanted when I wanted, and to make my own decisions. Those seemingly trivial things are what truly make life worth living. When they were taken away, I felt like I was losing myself in the process. Now, don't get me wrong, nursing homes serve an important purpose. They provide care for those who need it, and they can be a sanctuary for people who are physically unable to care for themselves. But if I could go back, I would have fought harder to hold on to my independence, to explore alternatives, and to make sure I only moved into a nursing home if it was absolutely necessary. So, before you make that decision for yourself or a loved one, I want you to stop and think, what are you really giving up? Are you ready to let go of the freedoms that have defined your life? Are there other ways to get the care and support you need without losing so much of yourself in the process? The truth is, once you make that decision, leaving isn't as easy as it seems. The barriers, whether financial, physical, or emotional, can make it harder than you think to return to the life you once knew. And that's the real takeaway here. Don't make a decision about your future lightly. Your life, your routines, your independence, these are worth protecting, for as long as you can. I hope my experience has opened your eyes to the realities of living in a nursing home, and that it helps you make a more informed choice when it comes to your own future or the future of a loved one. Thank you for joining me today. If anything I shared resonated with you, please take a moment to leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you've learned something valuable, or if you have a similar experience to share, I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with others who might find it helpful. Remember, the decisions you make today will shape the life you live tomorrow. Let's take charge of our lives, and own it.